again, back again. And we're back, and we're back, back again.
All right, and we are back again. As always, I'm Matt.
I'm Drew.
And this is the podcast where we take a look at a forgotten sequel from the past and try to figure out if this second installment was worth going back again. And today we are doing the follow-up to the 2004 Mean Girls, and we are doing Mean Girls 2.
You fell head over heels for the first Mean Girls.
Kind of psychic. Really? It's like I have ESPN or something.
Now, the Plastics
Who are the Plastics?
They're teen royalty.
are back.
It's so embarrassing how much they love me.
I'm gonna vomit.
It's their world.
Stay down there and don't ever look at me again.
But now it's her turn
Who's she?
There's tons of comments. All the guys think she's hot.
to get even.
This is war.
Mean Girls 2 came out in 2011. It's directed by Melanie Marin, written by Cliff Ruby, Alana Lesser, and Allison Schroeder. It stars Megan Martin, Myra Walsh, Jennifer Stone, Diego Boneta, and Tim Meadows. Mean Girls 2 is a reimagining of the events from the 2004 film. We're now set in Ohio. Joe Mitchell, the rugged, no-nonsense, no-drama new student at North Shore High School, is offered a proposition from a rich father, where Joe will receive payment to be friends with his daughter, a social outcast and aspiring artist named Abby. What Joe doesn't know is that this new friendship will place her in the middle of a lifelong rivalry between Abby and the also rich and relentless leader of the Plastics, Mandy. Will Joe be able to help Abby finally defeat her lifelong bully? Will Mandy learn from her jealous ways and redeem herself like how Regina George did in 2004? How much money was Tim Meadows paid to show up on set again? And overall, does anybody even care?
All right, that was pretty solid. There's a lot that was left out, obviously, because it's just such a dense movie, but it's not good.
Yeah. Before we kind of even get into this, and this seems to happen every season, where there's at least one movie on our list that's not actually a sequel. This is a reimagining. The only connective tissue is that Tim Meadows is still the principal.
But that's the first confusing thing, is that he's the principal still, but the school's in a different location.
Yeah.
Is it a different named school?
It's still North Shore High School.
Okay, so it's the same name.
But the first one was set in Illinois, and this one is set in Ohio.
And it's stated in the movie the state that it's in.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting because this isn't a theatrical release movie, so we got burned once again because this is a made-for-TV movie. And yeah, Mean Girls 2 was actually made by Paramount Famous, which is a made-for-home entertainment division of Paramount Pictures. It develops home entertainment sequels. This aired on ABC Family back in 2011 as part of Mean Girls double feature. And the film was actually, the 2011 Mean Girls 2, it was actually the most watched television movie of the week among viewers aged 12 to 34. With 2 million viewers in that age group, 3.4 million overall, and it says it attracted a strong female audience of 1.6 million. It was shot in 22 days, the sequel.
they really, I really thought this was like a stupid movie, but that's actually really smart, because
Yeah.
they baited a lot of audience members with that movie.
And I guess the reason why we're doing it as our next episode is
We got baited too.
Well, we got baited too.
We thought it was a real movie.
It's also topical because, the Mean Girls musical movie came out a couple months ago. And, Mean Girls from 2004, I would argue, is probably one of the best comedies in the last, 10 to 20 years.
I would say it's definitely like one of the most resilient. It's still, or I guess it holds up.
Yeah. It's still really funny. And it also, I think it was a surprise hit in 2004 because it is a funny movie first and foremost, but it also has a really good story attached to it that it makes sense on this podcast why they decided to make a sequel, but they really didn't. They did a reimagining that was made for TV.
I can get past that because people don't understand what sequels are, but this would make sense if they made the sequel a year or two later.
Yeah.
This is 7 years later.
Yeah.
This is ABC Family. How do we squeeze some cash out?
So my question is that if you're going to take this successful movie and you're going to reimagine it, why is Tim Meadows still the principal in this new high school? Well, the same high school, but just with less budget. Why is he here?
Again, that comes back to the fact that it's 7 years later. He's the only one who probably cared about it anymore. Everyone else is too successful at that point because it launched a lot of people's careers.
Sure, or he just needed a new pool. or something like that.
Maybe, but that's the thing is I don't think he got paid that much. I mean, I'll tell you what, it's good that he's in there because he's definitely the best part.
Is he?
He is. There is no other. He is like a solid like 6 out of 10 all the way through. And the rest of the movie's at like a 3.
Well, even so, we're going to talk a lot about borrowed beats from the first one into the second one, but even just like, is he the same character, Tim Meadows, from the first one to the second one? No, I know like logistically, but I'm saying even from memory of how Tim Meadows performed that in 2004, would you say his performance is the same?
It is. The thing is, like, he didn't seem to learn. We talk about this a lot, not learning anything from the original movie.
Yeah.
He didn't learn anything from the original movie because he makes the same mistakes as Principal when the similar Mean Girls style situation happens in Ohio.
Sure, I would argue a little bit against that because in the first one, it's just the fact that Tim Meadows like doesn't understand the girl world in the first one.
But he's still the authority.
He's still the authority, but he has a hard time like understanding all the drama that's going on. So much so that when we get to that third act where all the girls are in the gymnasium and they're kind of working through their problems, he hands everything off to Tina Fey's character. And she's just the math teacher, you know what I mean? But he can't understand these crazy girls in 2004. In this one, I feel like there's not even a lot of that. They just really just have him there as comic relief. And I would argue that a lot of the stuff that he does isn't really funny. It's just very Tim Meadows-y.
That's the thing.
You know?
You shouldn't need comic relief in a comedy.
Yeah.
But because this isn't a comedy, you need Tim Meadows there to be the comedy.
Yeah.
So he's really pulling a lot of weight.
There's a really funny line in the first Mean Girls in 2004. It's when all the girls are reading from the burn book and they're like attacking each other in the hallway. And he like has a baseball bat in the hallway to try to like detain these girls or whatever, or just like, you know, calm them down. And he says the line of,
"Whoa, hell no, I did not leave the South Side for this."
and like, you know, that's a funny line right there. There's a line in the second one where Tim Meadows, it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of the same beat, but it's completely 180'd, where he's in the locker room talking to the girls in Mean Girls 2, and he's saying, well,
Is everybody decent in here? I don't want a sexual harassment lawsuit again.
Yeah, we're good.
and when he said that line, I was like, what the hell is his character?
I thought that was a callback to the first movie because the first movie has the gym teacher who's making out with the student.
Oh.
So
See, I took that as Tim Meadows did something wrong.
it could play that way too, but it's such a bad line.
Yeah.
Because it's so vague. It could mean either thing.
If it's playing as that way where like he did something wrong, like he had a sexual harassment lawsuit against him, what a weird line to throw in a made-for-TV movie on.
But also, if he's just referencing something that happened 7 years ago in Illinois, what a weird thing to throw into
he can't do that because this is a reimagining. So in essence, that never happened.
I don't know. See, I don't know if that's true. I think in the Mean Girls universe, Tim Meadows was, well, it doesn't make sense, but I like to think it.
Yeah.
He was a principal in Illinois at a school with a name, and then he was principal in Ohio that had the same name as a school from Illinois.
So we've decided that this is only a sequel if Tim Meadows' story is canon.
And there was a 7-year difference. We're going to keep the 7-year difference too.
Yeah.
So maybe it is a real sequel.
Oh my God. Either way, that's a bold line for an ABC Family made-for-TV movie.
Well, hey, the first movie was bold. It was just also well written.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's interesting what beats that they decide to keep in the second one and try to repurpose.
And what they try to change.
Yeah.
Every change they make is so weird.
Because I do think stories about high school girls and drama, it's something that all genders can relate to, and I think that there are little twists and turns of like reimagining the plot that can actually work in that world.
Especially when like 7 years have passed and there's like different dynamics now.
Exactly. So let's go into this plot a little bit, because along the way we're going to have some borrowed beats, but we're also going to have some twists and turns that are like, whoa, what are we doing this for? So we meet Jo. She is the new student at this school. Her father makes engines for NASCAR, and because of this job that he has, she bounces around a lot. So when she comes to North Shore High School, it's kind of the same as Katie from the first one, where she's joining a new school and she doesn't know anybody. But the difference is that Katie has never been to a high school before, and in this one, Jo has been to so many high schools that she has learned to basically put on this, like I said, rugged, no nonsense, no drama kind of alter ego. She drives a moped. She wears like, you know,
which
she's very
contrasts that.
She's very grungy, you know what I mean?
Except for a red moped.
Yeah, except for a red moped. And she only understands the cliques in the high school by what cars that they drive. But As far as like who Jo is and how she perceives high school and how she perceives other students, I'm okay with that kind of setup to where she bounces around a lot of different schools. She learns not to get too close to people. And she's kind of put on this like, leave me alone persona. And she only associates what kind of kids these kids are by the kind of cars that they drive, which is kind of a clever introduction, but it is not something that they bring back like later
in any way.
And also, even to go with that, I felt like they were trying to set up something about like class as far as like how much money that these kids have
based on like the cars they drive.
Based on the cars they drive. But then when we meet basically our new Lizzie Kaplan character, Abby, she drives like a Mercedes Benz because she's also rich. So as far as like class and status goes, it was much more clean in the first one, obviously, which we're going to be saying that a lot. But in the second one, it felt like they were trying to do something new where it's like, well, your class doesn't determine your status. You can be wealthy and it doesn't necessarily mean you're
But they don't comment on it. They just muddy it. She comes to school, she meets the plastics, she knows who the plastics are. There's none of that scene where Lizzie Kaplan's explaining the plastics, because she's not some like outcast from South Africa. She's from, she's been to a lot of schools.
And we as the audience already know what plastics are.
Because it's a sequel.
Because it's a sequel, so she's just saying, oh, those are the plastics. Which
you
is such
know who they are.
You know who they are.
But then we meet the Abby character, who is the best friend. They have condensed the two friends from Mean Girls into one character named Abby. And you can explain who Abby is, because we had to rewind because you couldn't keep track.
I couldn't keep track
of her character.
So what's weird about Abby is that Abby is a social outcast. She's also an aspiring artist, just like Lizzie Kaplan in the first one. However, Abby is also wealthy. In fact, she might be the richest girl in the school by the way that they kind of tell her backstory.
She's richer than the Plastics.
She's richer than the lead of the Plastics, Mandy. And also, she is neighbors with Mandy. They live across the street from each other. And apparently, growing up, they had this rivalry where it was who could kind of outdo the other one as far as like what kind of toys they got or what their wardrobe was or how they were, I guess, developing their bodies. Cringe.
Whatever.
But the point is that they kind of do these three beats showing that Abby has always had the upper hand on Mandy throughout their whole kind of childhood and then to their like young teen years. But when we meet them in present day, Mandy is like, the lead plastic and she's the most popular in school and everybody loves her and she's like, just like the best. And Abby is just like a loser. But they never explain what happened between the teen years and high school.
Abby was having kick-ass birthday parties when she was a kid.
Yeah.
She was winning costume pageants when she was a teenager. She developed before everyone else. And she is now like the biggest loser in the school.
What happened?
I gave the movie the benefit of the doubt. I thought at a certain point, Mandy went around and just destroyed her socially. Because there's this, it's not even a real rivalry because Abby's not actively doing anything. It's a perceived rivalry that makes Mandy jealous.
Yeah. Mandy's motivation is strictly she is jealous of Abby.
So I thought she tore down Abby's like social life over the course of like the beginning of high school. There's no mention of that. Abby's a loser because the movie needs her to be. She is wealthy. She has all of these benefits about her and who she is. But I guess she's just so socially awkward that she never talks to anyone.
Yeah, because we were talking about the first one about how what kind of...
the Lizzie Kaplan character.
Yeah, the Lizzie Kaplan character. What kind of instigated Lizzie Kaplan to hate Regina George is that Regina George spread a rumor about her being a lesbian, and she kind of made her a social outcast.
The villain did something.
Exactly. In this one, it sounds like Abby created the villain, but then there wasn't a moment where then the social status flipped to where now Mandy had all the power.
Abby's her own worst enemy because she simultaneously is so socially awkward and then used all of her benefits in life to create someone who hated her.
Yeah, and the only indication that we have of this like social status change is this like knockoff Facebook like website, like some social media website where
those scenes sucks. The user interface is terrible.
Yeah, Mandy has like 943 friends and Abby has like 3. It's
it
like
looks like you can't even tell what's going on because it's like it's structured so weird.
It's like the South Park episode about Facebook where like the one kid has 0 friends, like that's Abby, So anyway, yada yada yada. This is the rivalry that takes place, and Jo is the new girl that's thrown in the middle of this. So one day after Jo Joe witnesses Abby and Mandy facing off in the cafeteria, and not facing off, really Mandy just like kind of scolding her and embarrassing her in front of everybody. Joe gives Abby a ride home and she meets Abby's father. And then Abby's father offers Joe... She propositions Joe to be Abby's friend to pick up her spirits, and he will pay her $4,000 initially, and then he will offer to pay her college tuition because the college that she wants to get into is very expensive, and her father, the NASCAR engine maker, he can't afford that college because he's just, my God, he's just working on this one engine that he can't fucking fix. And what's weird about this whole proposition is that this is where the movie starts. So when the movie actually starts, we are in Abby's father's like den, his office.
Flash forward to this scene and we have no context
for it. So she's standing in the father's office. She's looking at a picture of Abby, and then the father like very creepily comes up to her and goes like, she's gonna be in good hands with you. And then like there's a voiceover from Joe that's like, okay, let's actually go back a little bit. And we essentially work our way up to this moment where Joe will be in the office and the dad will proposition her to be friends with Abby for money. And when that happened, I was like, oh, so we're gonna do like a love don't cost a thing, a 10 things I hate about you kind of scenario where we're gonna pay somebody to have a fake relationship with somebody else in hopes that, it picks up their spirit or just to get money, I guess.
Which is like, it's such a terrible place to start the movie because you have that's a new element they're adding to Mean Girls. You think if they were going to do a flash forward, they would start with a familiar element, like the plastics or something. But it's Mean Girls 2, and we're opening up on this proposition scene between an adult man we don't know and then the main character who's doing the voiceover.
Yeah, and it's weird because if the first one almost is kind of like a fish out of water scenario, in this one, Joe understands how high school works so much so that when we have that scene of her in the parking lot looking at everybody's cars, she's kind of saying that as like, oh, business as usual. These kids are like this, these kids are like this, and these kids are the plastics. So she doesn't really have a fish out of water like situation. No, she really just has like, I need money.
Well, it's weird because it's like she's a rebel archetype, which is finely set up. It's like, okay, she travels a lot, so she can't develop lasting connections in high school. It's fine. But then to give her this plot where it's like, we need you to be friends. It's like, if you were going to make her rebellious, the father should be like uncomfortable about coming to her. Mm-hmm. It should be like she's set up to be, it seems like a dangerous biker girl or something, like a rebel. And then the dad just like, oh, you look sweet. Like, you're the first person I'm going to ask to pay to be my daughter's friend.
Yeah.
It's like, there's no setup for who this character is other than she's not a fish out of water.
Once like she starts becoming friends with Abby, obviously she actually enjoys Abby's company and she starts to actually care about her. But then we kind of go back to like a little bit of what the plot of the first Mean Girls is, which is because Joe is now friends with Abby, this is what's going to make Mandy want to target Joe.
Is that really what it is? I honestly forget how because it's like we're talking about, because like a big chunk of this part of the movie is Abby and Joe. And it's like, okay, the plastics have been gone for a while.
Yeah.
How do they get back into the plot? I can't remember.
What happens is that Mandy, because her rivalry with Abby is based off of jealousy, I guess, for Abby always being like number one and her being number two. It starts with Abby parks in a handicapped parking
That's
spot.
what it is. That's so funny. Okay, yeah. So go back and start in the cafeteria because that's when she breaks her leg.
Yeah, so they have an altercation in the cafeteria. Abby breaks her leg, and then because of that, she's able to park in a handicapped parking spot. And I guess the handicapped parking spot is closer than the other close parking spot.
They always are.
Which they always are. And then someone makes a reference like, wow, she got the better parking spot, Mandy. I guess she's number one and you're number two now. And Mandy's like,
Two? Mandy hated being number two.
This is war.
That sets off the whole rest of the movie.
And her response to this is by getting all the kids in the school to paintball Abby's Mercedes. And it's like they're just firing paintballs at her Mercedes. And like my question I was going to ask you earlier is, why does everybody hate Abby?
Because the plot needs them to. There's no reason. She's not ugly. There's no real social challenges other than like the shyness. There's no reason, and that it's to the point of the benefit of the movie almost, because that's almost like the most enjoyable element.
Yeah,
is how the movie just shits on Abby relentlessly. The plastic's always parked in the handicapped spot because no one needed it, and then Abby needs it because of the plastics, and the plastics take that personally.
and if that's If that's the first catalyst, is this parking spot thing. The second catalyst is then Mandy sees that the new girl Jo is also hanging out with Abby. She doesn't know, obviously, that Abby's dad is paying Jo to hang out with her yet. But she just sees that she's hanging out with Abby. So Mandy goes up to Jo and says, hey, you're new. You don't know how things work yet around here. And like, you don't know the people that you should and shouldn't hang out with. And she's, insinuating Abby. So she asks Jo if she wants to go get a coffee with her and like hang out. And Jo refuses to hang out with Mandy and the Plastics and to get a coffee with her. And Mandy is so insulted that Jo would rather hang out with Abby than Mandy, that Mandy decides, now I need to take down Jo. And that is the second catalyst. And really, that is like the way that Jo kind of gets into being Mandy's next target, all because she turned down a coffee with Mandy. Another borrowed beat, obviously, besides all the stuff we said, is coming up with a plan to take down somebody. In the first one...
3 beats.
There's 3 beats.
The boyfriend, the other girls, and the appearance.
Exactly. In this one, they give the plan to the Plastics to take down Jo, right?
Yeah, they reverse it. The Plastics have to do a plan to take Jo down.
Yeah, they're going to record her on her date. They're going to record everything that she says on the date about how she's never kissed a boy before. And then they're going to put on the TV monitors in the school that's usually made for the morning announcements, which we'll get into later. They play part of the date and they play the audio of Jo admitting that she's never kissed a boy before. And then everybody in the school mocks Jo for being a virgin, to the point where like there's one like kid in the background that's like, I can't believe she's a virgin. I didn't know. And where you were like, is everybody fucking in this school where it's so surprising that a 17, 18
She's
year
the
old
one virgin
is
in
a
the school.
virgin?
And it's like also like, again, they don't know who the character is because she's established herself as a loner, as an outcast. And it's like, oh, she's a virgin? Everyone's going to be surprised. Really? That's the one person you'd expect to be a virgin.
The Plastics pay this like AV club kid to kind of hack into the TVs and like, display stuff. But what's so funny about these like morning announcements on the TV is that
they're the best part.
It's always Tim Meadows giving off the morning announcements. And then there is one particular shot, not to get too, we're gonna get back to the list in a second, but there's one shot where Tim Meadows is, I guess, recording himself like dancing and being silly, thinking that like no one's gonna see that. So he's in the room where they record the morning announcements. He turns on the camera, he starts dancing like crazy. But then when you actually see what's being displayed on the TV for all the students to see, it's behind the camera that is usually what's filming the morning announcements. And it's like, who's filming that?
No one, it's the filmmakers.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, yeah, so they're gonna use the TV monitors to, I guess, embarrass her socially, right?
And the first time's a rousing success, even though it doesn't make logical sense, because everyone's laughing at Jo the Virgin.
Exactly. The second step is they are going to damage her family because they are going to pour sugar packet. The Plastics are gonna break into Jo's garage.
It's an open garage.
It's an open garage.
So they're trespassing.
They're trespassing, and they're going to pour sugar into the gas tank of the car that Jo's dad is working on, and they're gonna ruin the engine with sugar. And what was so funny about that scene is that Jo comes home and she sees that her dad has like been crying because the engine's not working, and they need this engine to work so he can make money and all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I just don't know what happened. The engine just won't work anymore. And then all of a sudden Jo like looks to her left and she sees these 2 like open sugar packets on the ground. So and it's like, 1, how did the car mechanic not realize that the reason the engine isn't working is because of sugar? 2, how does nobody see the sugar? And 3,
she sees it.
3, why did the girls leave behind the sugar packets?
Well, when they were using sugar packets, I have a question.
Yeah.
Because that scene's in the movie. It's like, oh, they're going to the place, they're going to the garage, they're dumping the sugar packets, they're opening each one and like dumping a little bit into the gas tank. Was it intentionally funny?
That's what's conflicting, because it's like they're smart enough to know that sugar destroys an engine, but they're dumb enough to leave the sugar packets behind.
Yeah.
So that's the second way that they take down Jo by...
That's the big way.
That's the big way. No, well, that's the second beat. I would say then the big way is that then they also mess with Jo's future, because they mess with all of her projects in her woodshop class and all the projects that she's working on. So they're messing with her grades, and then this also leads up to, there's a bunch of money being donated for charity that's going to be part of like the homecoming dance or whatever, but the money is for charity, and the Plastics are going to steal the money and put it in Joe's dad's shed, and then they're going to give an anonymous...
Frame him.
Yeah, they're going to frame her. So then Joe is going to get expelled from school, which is going to damage her college chances. And, you know, the reason why this escalates, why they have to keep taking down Joe, is because what they're realizing initially is that Joe isn't like the other girls. When the plastics do kind of come after her, Joe is there to snap back at her. And then Joe starts to recruit her own posse of
The anti-plastics.
anti-plastics. And then this becomes a thing where you have all the...
A war.
The plastics, it's civil war. The plastics in the school and the anti-plastics in the school. And once they successfully, not like defeat the plastics, but gain a higher social status as far as like everybody else in the school preferring the anti-plastics of the plastics, what happens is that Joe and the anti-plastics start to become bullies in their own way.
Well, the way we find out they're becoming bullies, or the way that manifests, is they begin bullying Abby. So again, Abby...
They don't really bully Abby, they just don't consider her.
Whatever.
As much,
It's the realization of, oh shit, we're becoming the thing we sought to destroy. But again, it's Abby. The screenwriters just have it out for Abby.
So either way, so you have two things going on. You have Joe becoming progressively more like Mandy and like a mean girl, like a plastic, I guess. And then you also have all the revenge that the plastics are taking on Joe to ruin her life socially, family-wise, and also her school career, whatever. And what this all kind of leads to, as far as like what is going to be the way that we resolve this, right? Once Joe is expelled and framed for stealing the money, she storms out of the principal's office. She finds Mandy. She grabs her by the arm. It looks like she's about to punch her in the face. And everybody in the school's watching. Tim Meadows is watching. He's just letting this happen. And what happens is, out of nowhere, Joe says, you know how we're going to handle this? We're going to have a flag football game.
Flimsiest excuse for a football field. It's like,
Yeah.
you're wondering why aren't they racing, and then you see the football field and you're like, oh, money.
It's almost like when they shot this movie, because they shot it in Atlanta, the school that they shot it at didn't have a football field, so they just found a big patch of grass
If
and
any
painted lines on
school
it.
would have a football field,
Yeah.
but they shoot in a field that is spray painted with the lines.
Yeah, and like everyone from the school is in attendance, even though there's only like 30 extras sitting in the stands.
Which, yeah, it's like, why does everyone care?
Yeah, Tim Meadows is there. He's watching the game also. He's cheering on the girls. This is a fictitious matchup that the girls created that everybody is like invested in, and it's like, why? But either way, during that game, forget the fact that it's one of like the worst football montages I've ever seen, like kind of like clipped together or whatever. We're also going to discover the truth that Mandy and her boyfriend actually stole the money for the charity.
During the game, yeah.
Yeah. So apparently the AV kid finds evidence that Mandy and her boyfriend stole the money because he was filming them making out in the car where the money...
After they robbed it.
After they robbed it, they're making out in the boyfriend's car, Mandy is, and the money's in the back seat, and she's like leaning forward and kissing the boyfriend. He has videotaped Mandy's tramp stamp, and during like, you know, the last quarter of this fake flag football game, Joe tackles Mandy in this flag football game. We're like, why is she on top of her? And it's not until Tim Meadows approaches Mandy and Joe on the ground, and Joe lifts up the back of Mandy's shirt to show the tramp stamp. And then Tim Meadows has a moment where he's looking at his phone and he's looking at the tramp stamp and he's like, oh, those are the same tramp stamp.
Yep.
I guess it must be her. Cops take her away. So the cops arrest Mandy and the boyfriend for theft. And then Joe is just like,
they win the game.
In the clear, yeah. She wins the game. She proves her innocence. And I almost expected the college that was going to deny her for, you know, getting in trouble to be there at the game being like, you know what, we were here as well and you're back in college. And then it ends, you know, happy ending where, you know, Abby and Joe are going to go to the same college. And yeah, and when this movie ends, I guess we don't really learn anything, which is kind of obvious, but who's to say who was the actual mean girl after all? I guess
what is the movie trying to say?
Well, let's talk about this, because the ending of the first one really tries to say that being a mean girl is juvenile. In this one, it ends with like Mandy not learning a lesson. She breaks into the homecoming dance and tries to like steal the crown back. And Tim Meadows is like, get out of here. You're not supposed to be on school ground. Like, you're still in trouble. She never learns her lesson.
Does Joe learn a lesson?
No, because Joe just gets everything she wants.
Abby doesn't learn a lesson.
Abby didn't need to learn a lesson. Abby was just always the victim, I guess, even though she's like rich.
I think this movie was designed just to be like a hell for the Abby character.
Yeah. And you know what's so funny about this is like, and this is a perfect example. There is a night where I guess on top of the rivalry that Abby and Mandy have with each other, I guess they share the same birthday. So there's a night where they are both gonna
we forgot about the birthdays.
Yeah, they're both gonna have birthday parties. And this is a moment in the movie, I believe, where we are still doing the plastics versus the anti-plastics. We're still in like the middle of the war.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I guess everybody in the school just decides to show up to Abby's party and not go to Mandy's.
Yeah.
I thought Abby and Joe were gonna find a way to like ruin Mandy's party, which would then force all the guests to come over to Abby's party.
Yeah.
But instead, Mandy just comes down to her party and nobody's there and everybody's at Abby's party.
Yeah.
So then Mandy decides to order a bunch of pizzas and like poison them or do something like put laxatives in. They never really explain what they do to the pizzas, but they're going to send a bunch of pizzas over to Abby's party so everybody gets sick. And the only reason
No. Abby orders the pizzas.
Yeah, no,
and then
and
then Mandy intercepts the pizza guy.
Yeah. So, but she intercepts the pizza guy outside of the party to poison all the pizzas. But then the only reason Joe finds out about this is because they're in Abby's house with the pizzas. And then at the last minute, this is kind of like the sugar packets all over again, where then Joe like looks to the left and she sees one of the plastics paying the pizza guy for successfully dropping off the pizzas. And she goes, oh, the plastic must have done something to this pizza. But it's like, why is that girl in Abby's house paying the pizza guy?
She could have waited till he came back outside to the car, anywhere else. She's in the house where the crime's about to be committed, paying the guy off. So it's the most obvious information. Now, this scene also breaks the movie because it establishes that Abby's parents can buy friends and popularity for Abby in the form of lavish parties. Because even though Abby's unpopular, these parties still get everyone to attend without hardly trying.
Yeah.
So they never needed to, I'm just realizing this, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
They never needed to buy Joe specifically.
Yeah.
They could have just kept buying parties and favors that way.
Yeah, because apparently everybody in this school is so willing just to go with the flow of whoever is the most popular.
They will attend Abby's birthday party one day and have the time of their life, and then they will paintball her car the next day.
You know, and it's like it never builds to anything. Like
it's just so wild.
It's so wild. Like it's just such a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So
we never talked about the themes for Mean Girls 2.
Well, and it's also like, let's look at the title really quick. This is called Mean Girls 2, and we know that it's a reimagining. They're really just borrowing the title for, you know, the sake of everybody knowing the IP, right? Like,
it's so they can do a double feature.
Exactly.
This will get a lot of viewers.
I would argue that, like, I mean, they only said like Mean Girls like once in Mean Girls 2.
Well, they say plastics a lot.
They say plastics a lot, but this isn't really about mean girls. Like, what is this second movie about? There are no mean girls in Mean Girls 2.
You're almost asking, like, what should the title actually be?
Exactly. That's what I'm... Yeah, there really doesn't seem to be, like, a reasoning as to why they made the movie, and there doesn't seem to be a reasoning as to, like...
The viewers.
The viewers, yeah.
Well, no, they got the viewers. That's why they made the movie. It was a bait and switch.
Yeah, and I guess the only reason why they even do this is obviously because Mean Girls from 2004 is wildly successful. It only has a budget of $18 to $17 million and had a box office return of $130.1 million.
That's a big return, but that's a bigger budget than I thought it would have had.
I know. And then, you know, the second one, we don't know what the budget was. We just know they shot it in 22 days, and we don't know what the box office is because there probably isn't any. Obviously, you know, there would be continued success even after Mean Girls 2 with the Mean Girls world because Tina Fey would go on to do the Broadway musical that was very successful, and then they also decided to turn the musical into a movie, which just came out a couple months ago, like I said, which is the Mean Girls musical movie.
I'm realizing we didn't talk about the Mean Girls very much at all in Mean Girls 2. We didn't talk about either of the plastics aside from Mandy. I don't even remember their names.
Well, to be honest, the side plastics outside of Mandy, they're not really copies of the first one besides the fact that, like...
One of them is, one of them isn't.
Yeah, one of them is a dumb blonde that, just like Amanda Seyfried's character, where she's just like super dumb, but they also add in the thing with this new blonde girl in Mean Girls 2 where she's just like really horny and like making out with everybody.
Amanda Seyfried's character was...
She wasn't as horny as this girl was. And then the other girl, who's the replacement for Gretchen, she's just a germaphobe.
Well, yeah, because Gretchen was originally the rich girl. Yeah. Now the main Mean Girl's the rich girl, so they give the Gretchen character the germophobia.
Which is funny because one of the ways that Joe convinces everybody to like get back or take down the Gretchen copy character in the second one, the germaphobe, is she's just gonna get everybody in the high school to like sneeze on her and cough on her. Yeah, and then she's just like walking down the hall and she like everybody's just coughing and sneezing on her. And it's like, how is this bullying in like a clever way? You're literally just coughing on a girl who's afraid of germs. So I don't know. They're not really important. They're just kind of there as, I guess, comedy beats, but they're not very funny.
That's the thing, is it's called Mean Girls.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'll sign off now.
So we're doing a new segment on the show where it's called Life Imitates Art. Sometimes how the movies and the themes of the movies kind of pour over into reality. So this is an article from Entertainment Weekly, and the Mean Girls writer says Tina Fey and the studio haven't paid her for franchise success and is considering legal action. This was as early as March 19th, 2023. So apparently the writer behind the source material for Mean Girls was considering taking legal action against Tina Fey and Paramount over what she called unpaid dues for the ongoing success of the Mean Girls franchise. So Rosalind Wiseman, the author of Queen Bees and Wannabes, she signed a deal in 2002 for $400,000 where she would relinquish all rights to the original motion pictures and derivative works including musicals and TV shows. But her contract included net profits, residual gains dependent on how the movie fares at the box office. However, the studio insisted to Wiseman that the movie made no net profits and instead had so many extra costs that there was no revenue to share with her. Wiseman even went on record as saying, yes, I had a terrible contract, but the movie has made so much money and they keep recycling my work over and over again and they're not even considering me. She went on to say that over the years, Tina's spoken so much about women supporting other women, but it's gotten increasingly clear to me that in my own personal experience, that's not going to be the experience. And I don't disagree with any of that. That is really shitty, the fact that she created this book and that, Tina Fey came along and, adapted it and, she signed a bad contract and she's still not gotten any compensation or recognition for the work that she created. So it's kind of weird because that's like, life imitating art, art imitating life. At the end of the day, it sounds like Tina Fey, regardless of how nice of a person she is, when it comes to this particular relationship with Rosalind Wiseman, Tina Fey's kind of the mean girl.
It would seem the case.
That's what Mean Girls 3 is going to be about. It's going to be
the legal battle?
The legal battle between Wiseman and Fey.
That would actually be really funny. It's shot like a comedy.
Yeah. So as always on this podcast, we ask 3 questions that lead to a final vote of was it worth going back again? And the first question is, does it work as a sequel? I think we can make this one quick. It does not work as a sequel. It's not a sequel.
Well, it's unclear if it's a sequel because they don't address the what do you want to call it, the Tim Meadows paradox.
I think that you are being gracious because you were trying to hold on.
It's called Mean Girls 2.
Yeah.
And Tim Meadows, they never say, he references indirectly the first movie. So for me, it's a sequel.
I don't know if that...
My answer might have to be yes.
I don't know if that sexual harassment line indicates that...
It is so off-putting and weird if he is talking about himself.
I think he's talking about himself.
You didn't know about the gym teacher thing from the first one, though.
Well, but he doesn't phrase it in a way that is like addressing the gym teacher.
I'm not saying it's well written.
All right, so you're saying it works as a sequel. I think regardless of
I'm not saying it works on any level.
Well,
I'm saying it is technically a sequel.
But does it work as a sequel is the question.
Oh, okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, there you go.
The characters. Technically, it is a sequel. That is my argument, but no, it does not work.
It does not work as a sequel. This is a reimagining. This is literally just borrowing a title. It's not good. And honestly, besides the fact that this was topical because of Mean Girls 2024, I was upset that we had to watch this movie.
It'd be nice if it was a better movie.
Yeah. So that sounds like it's going to get 2 X's right off the bat. So the next question is going to be, is it enjoyable / entertaining?
Nope. Because I remember I spoke to you and I said, you have to try to make a movie like this boring. Just the flat way it's shot, the fact that it's a comedy with no jokes.
Yeah.
It's a comedy that makes the jokes jarring because you don't expect it to be funny because it is so bland.
Yeah. And it's so weird too because
the same thing with Tim Meadows' performance was enjoyable despite this because he was actually genuinely funny in some moments.
Some moments, yeah. But what's so weird about this sequel in particular is most of the comedy sequels we've done on this list have not been good comedy sequels, but they've at least attempted to be funny.
Yeah, comedies,
right? And this second one, it's like they had never seen Mean Girls.
Yeah.
And they just made some kind of knockoff, almost Disney style movie.
It's worse than that though.
Yeah.
Like you would think if like I really didn't think the ABC Family commissioned this because they make better shit than this.
Yeah.
So that was almost like surprising when you said that at the beginning of the episode.
And even the director of this, she's done a lot of like episodic, shows, and she's done like, Pretty Little Liars. So, I don't think that like it's her fault that it's directed so poorly. I just think that they had nothing to work with. They had no money to work with. Like there's a great as far as like how much money that this second Mean Girls had, there's a great moment where Tyler and Joe are gonna go on their first date.
Oh yeah.
And they do a montage of just like still shots of them with just close-ups of their face laughing.
A tree in the background.
Maybe a tree in the background, laughing, eating popcorn, getting closer together. And then it's a hard cut to the end of the night where Tyler just says like, man, I had a great time at that carnival with you. It's like,
there was no carnival music. There was nothing.
Nothing. There's not even like an attempt to put any kind of like lights in the background of these like still shots to show that they were at like a carnival.
That is so funny because it's like, can you imagine them reading the script and then being like, okay, the script says carnival. Well,
no money.
Best I can do is a tree.
Absolutely, yeah, nothing. So I don't blame the director for not basically having any resources to make this movie. But just in regards to the question, is it enjoyable / entertaining? It was almost so bad that it was entertaining.
No,
because
not for me.
I think it had the potential to do that, but it just wasn't. So
should have swung bigger.
I'm gonna say it's not enjoyable / entertaining. So that sounds like it's gonna get another 2 X's. So the final question is gonna be, does it need to exist? Are
you trying to form an argument?
I don't know, not at all.
There's no fucking way.
It's just depressing. You know what it is? It's depressing that we have to ask these questions.
It is. Because it's like one thing if it's like, oh, if this was a bait and switch in the theaters, then that'd be interesting because we can analyze the box office numbers. It's like it's a bait and switch for TV. Okay, it got some viewers. It's like let's look at the Nielsen ratings. It's like that doesn't mean anything.
It feels like an afterthought that it even exists, right? Especially the fact that they shot this in 22 days. And that and I would also say the performances and everything, they're not good. And I'm not trying to blame any of the actors for their performances, but these really feel like people that are almost like a soap opera.
Everything's phoned in.
Yeah, not even phoned in. It's like they don't get the time to actually do anything. So they just show up on the day, these actors, they get their lines, they say them, and then we move on with our life. So if you're doing that math at home, that's gonna be 0 checks and 6 X's. So it's gonna get 1 giant X for not worth going back again. And yeah, I didn't even know that this movie existed, to be honest. I saw the thumbnail and even the poster that's on HBO Max. They don't even look like the girl that's in the front of the poster with her arms crossed.
Yeah, Joe.
That doesn't look like Joe in the movie.
It's sad. I was going to talk to you and I was going to be like, can we just do Bratz instead?
I know.
Well, that's almost like a better Mean Girls sequel.
Bratz is the better Mean Girls sequel in the sense of taking the themes of Mean Girls and then twisting enough stuff, but then also going over the top ridiculous with shit. It's so bad that it's amazing.
Yeah, you would want that with this movie, but you don't.
Yeah.
You don't get that.
As always, thanks so much to everyone for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you like, subscribe, and you comment below. You can listen to all episodes of the Back Again Sequel podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can watch these episodes with video on YouTube. Just subscribe to wag.productions. Special shout out to Neely for doing our intro and our outro song. And outside of that, Drew, you got anything else to add?
This sequel was not fetch.
All right, everyone, we will see you next time, hopefully sooner than the last time.